So what's interesting is that I started this channel almost a year ago with one of my first videos being a review for Halloween Kills. And I am someone who liked Halloween Kills. I revisited it recently and I was able to see the flaws that others mentioned. And now fast forward a year later, we have Halloween Ends. And this was a complete 180 of what I was expecting. Like when you hear the title Halloween Ends, you expect it to be the final chapter that plans to focus solely on Laurie Strode and her journey. Yet the film doesn't do that. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to For the Agenda. If you're new here, welcome. My name is Huang, and on this channel, I essentially watch mainstream content and let you know if it's worth your time because your time is valuable and no one should tell you otherwise. Today, I'm going to be talking about the eagerly awaited and not as well marketed Halloween Ends. Now, this film has been 44 years in the making. It's set 4 years after the events of Halloween 2018, and we catch up with Laurie, who has decided to liberate herself from fear and rage and embrace life. Shit starts to go down in Haddonfield again, and it ignites this catalyst of violence and terror that is going to force Lori to finally confront the evil that she can't control. Right off the bat, I'm going to acknowledge that this film took some giant swings story wise, and I enjoyed this quite a bit. I can confirm that this film is better than Halloween Kills, but it's not perfect. The issue with taking big swings like this is that in order for it to work, everything that you plan to mention needs to be properly explored. And here, it's not 100% explored. My theater, did not clap when it ended, which just confirmed that, this will divide audiences. Some like myself will probably say it deserves a cult following later on down the line, and others are going to drag this film horrendously. There is no in between. As a fan, the best thing I can recommend to you is that you see this with an open mind and lowered expectations. The opening scene for this film, I think, will surely make teenagers reconsider taking babysitter jobs. I never was a babysitter, and after seeing that scene, I will never be a babysitter, especially with bratty kids. I definitely did not expect that as the opening scene. But given what the story ends up being later on, it does work. And that's the thing with this film. It's kind of unpredictable in the sense that it's this 180 that no one expects. And the story is essentially not even about Lori. It's about healing from trauma. And there's like two to three storylines at once. And when I saw in the opening credits that this had four screenwriters attached to it, I got very nervous. When you have a lot of screenwriters attached with credits, like four or more, that usually means that there are a lot of people who have to be called in to come in and clean and fix a lot of stuff up. And I will say, I don't mind the storyline pivot overall. I was all right with how toned down the story ends up being. But this is certainly, again, going to divide audiences. Like, if you're expecting the Michael Myers stabby stab fest, this is not it. The first thought I had when analyzing this story was that this bold storyline attempt will be interesting for those who liked Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, even though this is nothing like any of the other Halloween films I've seen, to be quite honest. And the reason I bring up Season of the Witch is because this film isn't a straight up slasher. It has some supernatural elements sprinkled in here that I thought was interesting. Now, what I liked about this film is that it highlights what happens to people that are consumed by fear, by evil, by guilt, and even by spreading blame. It becomes as infectious as virus. I also like this film connects that mob mentality effect from the last film and showcases how that can just lead you nowhere. So while this film is not exactly a completely slasher film, this film has more emotion and character development than the last film. For example, we fall in love with Laurie Strode again, and we get to see more of the elements that made us fans of this final girl once again. Which, by the way, bravo to Jamie Lee Curtis and Andy Matichak. They were absolutely fantastic and command your attention throughout. They were just so good. And Jamie Lee Curtis, her final battle, it was pretty badass. One of my criticism is it was kind of cut a little too short. Like it wasn't long enough. If you see one of the trailers, it kind of gives some of the fight away, and then it's not as exciting. So I really do wish it would have been a longer battle scene, at least as long as the version in 2018, but I liked it. I thought it worked. I'm glad that we got that fight. I just wish it would have been a little bit longer. And Rowan Campbell as Corey was also really good. I did not expect this performance from his character, and he really went for it, and it really pays off. Also, another thing I like about this film, the film has an 80s vibe going for it, which I liked quite a bit in terms of the scenery, the setting, and I thought that that worked pretty well. Now, speaking of criticisms, one of my main criticisms here, I touched about it a little bit earlier, is that because there are a lot of subplots here, not everything is explored like it could have been. The problem with having too many cooks in the kitchen, your product becomes lackluster. For example, Kyle Richards' character is not important here, completely pushed aside, even after what she went through in Halloween Kills, which I found kind of surprising because it felt as if she was going to be quite a key element in Halloween Ends, but she isn't. And I guess that they played it off as like she moved on, but to me, that doesn't work as well. Story wise, there are some things that you can just assemble the puzzle yourself with the pieces that are given to you as it goes along, but with the perspective of the average moviegoer that checks out one film a month, let's say, the big blockbuster, which is the mentality it felt like my theater had. Like some people you could tell were fans, others were there because it's Halloween and they want to watch a horror film, and maybe they didn't want to watch Smile. Maybe they were just in time for Halloween. Who knows? With that kind of perspective in mind, unless the film is a mystery, which this isn't, it's not a mystery at all, the mentality is that I shouldn't have to assemble the puzzle myself for it to make sense. I don't want to do the work. I'm supposed to get scared and go along for the ride as it unfolds before me. And I'm watching all this shit go down to then process it later. I don't want to do the work as I'm watching the film. And I think that's why my theater today was quite cold to this film. I actually got out of it like an hour and a half ago. I don't think that anyone besides myself genuinely liked this film. Again, they were quite cold to it. No one applauded. I went to the first show available, which was 5 p.m., and there weren't even that many of us, like say 15 to 20 people max. And that's not good considering that when I saw Halloween Kills, that theater was essentially full, like sold out. Another issue with this film is it just isn't as scary as other films in the franchise. It's not the most scary. It's not the most fun entry. I had a good time with it, but when this film decides to be a slasher film, it's really good. When this focuses on those characters, those emotions, that depth, it works. But I don't think that's what you sold. And that's the problem. You marketed this as the final battle of Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. It's ending. We're expecting a huge ending. It's not that huge. It's very toned down. I like that the kills itself are more toned down than its predecessor. And I thought on a rewatch, some of the kills in Halloween Kills were, in fact, too much. While this film is more toned down, I just think that the way it's marketed doesn't do this film any favors. While I like the ending and I felt it works, it did kind of feel uneven. While it wraps up a 44-year journey and provides a form of catharsis for the fans, whether you agree with how it ends or not, you can tell this is how they wanted the story to end. So you knew that going into the script, they were like, this is how we want it to end. Now we got to figure out how we're going to get there from Halloween Kills. And I think that's a bit of the problem. They try to do too much in an hour and 51 minutes, and they try to throw in so many other things here, there, left, right, that it got a little too messy for its own good, but I still enjoy it. I sometimes enjoy a mess. That's just how it is. So overall, I think Halloween Ends is a mixed bag that while all over the place, I overall enjoyed it. It's not as flashy or as exciting as the other two films until its bold last act. The last act is where it really picks up. You have all the puzzle pieces together, and then you're just there for a fun ride. That's where it got really good. This is a good film, but it's not going to be for everyone. This worked for me, and it was kind of fascinating for me to analyze, but while it tries something different, this is just not what audiences are expecting. And if you lower your expectations a bit, it'll be a lot easier to digest. I will say though, it's actually a waste that this film is simultaneously debuting on Peacock because it will undercut its financial gain. There's no doubt about it. And especially its rewatchability factor. After the first week, when everyone finds the way to watch this film and potentially spoil it on Twitter, because unfortunately that's what people do. I don't see many people circling back to rewatch it for Halloween. This is a film that would have benefited from the theatrical only model, like Smile has right now, and it's making some money. I don't know if this film will be able to make the same amount of money, especially because it has some competition coming up in the form of Black Adam, Tickets to Paradise. Don't underestimate those rom-coms with huge leads. They have star power for a reason. So it is a shame. We'll see how this does. I hope to be proven wrong. I really do. And that it ends up being very successful. But it's kind of not fair to Jamie Lee Curtis, who has carried this franchise for all these years, that it won't be filling up theaters like it could have. And that in itself is a shame. My recommendation for fans who actually want to see this film, the best way to watch it is actually in a theater, surprisingly, because this was made to be seen in a theater, critiques and all. Hopefully, there is an audience that will be engaged with it so you can enjoy it more than you will at home. I think watching it on Peacock, there might be people who will just start getting bored and get on their phones throughout the film and maybe even pause it and not go back to it because again, it's not the slasher you're expecting. And if you're not a fan of this franchise, this film's not going to make you one. I will probably rewatch it because I genuinely did enjoy this film. That is my review of Halloween Ends. Thank you so much for watching. You can watch this in theaters or on Peacock. And if you watch it on Peacock, you have to have the $4.99 subscription tier. Now, if you like this video, you can hit the like button and subscribe. I'd greatly appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter and on Letterboxd at Leading Mohicans. And remember, regardless of what others feel about the things you love, it's always for the agenda. Bye.